I was shooting, though.
Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. Stop. Stop. Turn around.
Oh, yeah. That Fred cut. Ha!
State of Florida versus Isaiah Jermaine Chance, case number 24 CF 11996A, trial division 1, verdict form. We, the jury, finds as follows as to count 1, victim Charles Jones. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder as charged.
4 men drove 230 miles from Jacksonville to Tampa in the middle of the night, hunted Julio Foolio through a hotel parking lot while he was celebrating his 26th birthday, and killed him before the sun came up. 2 years later, a Florida jury just handed down their answer to all of it, and the man you are about to see break down in tears on camera is one of the shooters. To understand why this case matters, you have to go back to Jacksonville, Florida, and a neighborhood on the north side they called the Bricks. Charles Andrew Jones II, who the rap world knows as Julio Foolio, was born on June 21, 1998, and he grew up in the Moncrief area with the kind of childhood that takes a lot from a person before they are even old enough to make their own choices. When Charles was 11 years old, he watched his best friend's mother get shot by her boyfriend. 2 years after that, in May of 2011, his own father, Charles Jones Sr., a well-known figure in the Jacksonville streets, was murdered by a neighbor. Then in 2014, another close friend was killed in a drive-by shooting. All of that happened before this man was old enough to vote. By 16, Charles had walked away from football, got himself affiliated with the 6 Block gang tied to the broader KTA crew out of the 45th Street area on the north side, and picked up a gun. He started rapping around 2015, calling himself Foolio because of how wild he was, and Mr. Six because of his block. The music eventually gave him a real following, but the streets were never done with him. And at the heart of everything was a war. A long, bloody, very public war between 6 Block and KTA on one side, and a rival crew called ATK, short for Ace's Top Killers, connected to Jacksonville rapper Young and Ace, along with their allied group known as 1200 on the other. Law enforcement has described this feud as one of the deadliest gang conflicts in Jacksonville's history, going back to at least 2015, with dozens of people killed on both sides over the years. What made this beef different from most street conflicts is how wide open both sides were about it. They were using drill music, naming real dead people, and talking about real murders to embarrass each other and keep the anger going. Prosecutors actually played some of these songs during the trial, including ATK's track Who I Smoke, which had the group dancing on the graves of 6 Block members, and Foolio's response called When I See You, where he filmed himself in a cemetery drinking champagne and mocking Ace's dead. The moment that truly broke everything open happened in 2017. Foolio's cousin, Zion Brown, 19 years old, was robbed by an ATK affiliate named DeAndre Thomas in February of that year, and then shot to death by that same man in a home invasion 4 months later. That killing was the spark that turned what was already a tense rivalry into a full war. Foolio talked about Zion in a Vlad TV interview, and you could hear the weight of it and how he spoke.
Well, you had a cousin, Zion Brown.
Yeah. I got him on my stomach, tattooed.
19 years old, a man stormed into a house and shot him to death.
Yeah.
When you heard about the murder, how'd you feel?
I was crushed. Cause it's like, I could have saved him, like, you know? I could have cause I was like on the phone with him, like he called me, he was like, big cuz. That's my cousin, you know what I'm saying? He like, cuz, let me come to Daytona with you. I'm trying to come to Daytona. I was mad at him for a dumbass reason. Like, I straight told him, no, bro, you can't come with me. Like, I don't fuck with you right now. Hung up on him. That night he died, so that shit fucked my head up. I'm like, damn.
That guilt stayed with him, and the beef did not slow down. In June of 2018, there was an ambush at a Jacksonville steakhouse that left Young and Ace shot and his brother, Trayvon Bullard, dead, along with 2 other people. Both sides had been losing people for years, and neither side was stepping back. Vlad TV interviewed both Foolio and Ace separately during this period, and what came out of those conversations tells you everything about where this whole situation was headed. Vlad was openly worried about it.
Unless someone just steps up and puts the bullshit behind them, it's just going to keep going, because really, it's not like you're the one that's really doing it, because you're the rap star. You're the one with money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the people around you that don't have anything to lose, who don't have a future, who don't have hot records, who don't have money in the bank. They don't give a shit. But you're the one that actually has the most to lose.
Foolio heard that. He even talked about wanting the beef to end at some point, but when you asked him directly about where his head was, this is what he said.
And it's crazy because I done dodged death so many times. Sometimes I just be like, this is just the way I live. I don't know. I just see death so much.
He had survived being shot before. In October of 2023, there was an attempted hit on him where he was shot in the foot. The streets had been trying to get to him for a long time, and he knew it. But when his 26th birthday came around in June of 2024, he posted about it on Instagram like it was any other celebration, telling the whole world which city he was going to be in, which clubs he was hitting, what the plans were. He was celebrating his life, and the people who wanted him dead were reading every word. On June 23, 2024, Foolio and his crew came to Tampa to celebrate his birthday. The evening started at a rented Airbnb where they tried to throw a pool party, but the property owner called the police because there were too many people and the noise was out of hand, and the whole group got kicked out. So they moved on to the clubs. First stop was Teaser's Gentlemen's Club on North Nebraska Avenue, where Foolio performed. Then they moved on to Truth 18 Lounge on East Bush Boulevard, where Foolio went live on Instagram and kept posting to his stories as the night went on. What he did not know was that 2 cars had already driven roughly 230 miles from Jacksonville to Tampa that same day, carrying weapons and a very specific plan. A silver Chevrolet Cruze with Isaiah Chance and his girlfriend Alicia Andrews was inside the tracking car. A black Chevrolet Impala with the 3 shooters followed separately. They had already booked their own Airbnb near the area to use as a safe house, and every post Foolio put up that night was giving them a live map of where he was. Surveillance cameras outside both clubs picked up both the Cruze and the Impalas circling and parking. Phone records showed calls going back and forth between the tracking car and the shooter car all through the night as they followed the convoy from one stop to the next. Chance and Andrews were seen outside on their phones, moving around, passing information along in real time. Around 4:30 in the morning, Foolio's convoy, a black Dodge Charger and a few other vehicles, pulled into the parking lot of the Home 2 Suites by Hilton near the University of South Florida. They were trying to book rooms for the rest of the night. Foolio stayed in the front passenger seat of the Charger with his feet up on the dashboard while people went inside to handle the check-in. His driver later described what happened in the moments that followed.
Prior to us getting to the hotel, he had called and made reservations. And then we got to the hotel, he went in, checked in, and they told him that the rooms already been taken. So he came back to the car. He was on his phone trying to find a hotel. I'm just on point watching everything. Looked down at my phone for like a split second. And then something just ain't feel right. So as soon as I look up, I just see, you feel me, shooters. I just kept telling him to duck. He wasn't really saying much. I ain't really hear him say really. Cause the gunfire was so loud. I already knew when I stopped the car, cause he wasn't responding. I heard him take his last breath.
Surveillance footage shown in court revealed that the black Impala had entered the parking lot first and done a slow, full loop around the building, as if checking every angle, making sure everything was in position. Then the silver Cruze made a pass directly in front of the Charger where Foolio was sitting, turned around, came back a second time, and drove out of the lot. Within about 2 minutes of that, 3 men, dressed head to toe in black with masks on their faces, walked out of the Impala and moved toward the Charger. Two of them had AR-style rifles fitted with black mesh brass catchers designed to catch the empty shell casings before they hit the ground, so investigators would have less to work with later. The third had a 9mm Glock with an extended magazine that had been modified to fire automatically. All three opened fire directly into the passenger side of the Charger at the same time. Foolio tried to get into the back seat. The driver hit the gas and tried to get away, but the shooters tracked the moving car and kept firing as it fled across the parking lot. Investigators found 31 9mm shell casings scattered on the ground at the scene, all from the pistol since the brass catchers had collected everything from the rifles. Bullets went through hotel room windows where families were sleeping, hit other people's parked cars, and caused one hotel guest to find a bullet fragment and a burn mark on his family's bed sheets when he woke up that morning. The Charger eventually crashed to a stop in the next-door parking area. The medical examiner, Dr. Noah Riley, later testified that Foolio had been hit multiple times in the upper chest, right arm, and back, with the shot that killed him going straight through his lung, heart, and aorta, causing him to bleed out. He was in a defensive position inside the vehicle when he died. 3 other people from his group were also shot, including a man named Gino Norris, who had been asleep in the back seat when the shooting started and woke up to find his friend covered in blood. Norris managed to get inside the hotel, and he described the driver, Xavier Edwards, collapsing against the wall in the hallway and begging over and over not to be left to die. When Tampa police arrived at the scene in those early morning hours, they were working with a parking lot full of shell casings, a blood trail leading from the Charger through the hotel lobby and up the elevator, and bullet damage spread across multiple hotel rooms where guests had been sleeping. What they also had, and what would end up being the backbone of this entire case, was surveillance footage from almost every angle, cell phone data from every person who had been near that parking lot, and the digital records that follow every person everywhere they go, whether they realize it or not. Within days of the murder, law enforcement had already used highway license plate readers to place the Impala and the Cruise traveling together from Jacksonville to Tampa on June 22nd, the day before the killing, which meant investigators knew before the week was out exactly which vehicles had made that trip and when. Cell tower data from the phones in both cars filled in the rest of the picture, showing the coordinated movement from the moment they left Jacksonville all the way to the parking lot where Foolio died. Police also went back through Foolio's Instagram activity and matched it against the movements of the suspects' phones. Every time Foolio posted his location that night, the data showed the suspects' phones responding and redirecting. They were literally using his posts as a live navigation system, and the phone records showed all of it. 5 people were eventually charged in connection with the murder. Here is who they are and how law enforcement caught up with each of them. Isaiah Chance, 23 years old at the time of the verdict, was identified by prosecutors as the main coordinator of the whole operation. Gang investigators from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office testified that he is a confirmed ATK member, with social media photos of him alongside known ATK associates, hand signs, and clothing connecting him to the group. His job that night was not to pull a trigger. His job was to make sure the shooters always knew where Foolio was. He rode in the Cruise with his girlfriend, following the convoy from club to club and feeding information back to the Impala the whole time. When police searched his home in the days after the murder, they found 2 Glock 9mm handguns and a poster on his bedroom wall that said "Bully Down," which prosecutors said was a direct reference to Foolio's street name. Sean Gathright was only 18 years old when this happened, making him 20 at the time and the youngest of the whole group. Investigators connected him directly to the block Impala, the car the shooters came out of. Lab testing showed that tape recovered from one of the rifles had a mix of DNA from at least 4 people, and Gathright came back as the main contributor on the outside surface. When police pulled him over shortly after the murder, they found a Glock 9mm in the car, along with a bag containing rifle rounds and 9 spent rifle casings. A search of his home found a gun safe with multiple rifles inside, one of which matched the description of the murder weapon, another fitted with a brass catcher, and 2 9mm casings that were a close match to casings recovered both at the Tampa scene and from prior Jacksonville incidents going back to the 2023 attempt on Foolio's life. Rashad Murphy, 32 years old at the time of the verdict, was identified as one of the 3 men who stepped out of that Impala. He was arrested just 3 days after the murder in a hotel parking lot in Gwinnett County, Georgia, after a license plate reader flagged the silver Cruise nearby and officers moved in on it. Rashad saw them and ran. It took 2 taser shots to bring him down. When detectives sat him down for an interview, he first said he had never been to Tampa at all, then changed his story when they put the evidence in front of him, claiming he had traveled there with a man named Darius Beals. But Darius Beals' phone data showed he was nowhere near Tampa on the dates in question. And then there was the message that came from Rashad's phone just hours after Foolio was killed, which read, "I'm coming home, my thirst is quenched. Pop a bottle of Don Julio today." Don Julio was a deliberate taunt using the dead man's name. Davion Murphy, 29 years old, and Rashad's cousin, was the last of the 5 to be taken into custody, and catching him took the longest. He went on the run after a warrant was issued for him in July of 2024 and managed to stay hidden for 6 full months until police caught up with him on January 6, 2025. After he was brought in and placed in an interrogation room, he was left alone for a period of time with a camera running. What he did during that time, which prosecutors described as him sitting there miming shooting motions with his hands toward the camera as if acting out the murder, was played for the jury during opening statements. Prosecutor Scott Harmon told the jury directly, "That is Mr. Murphy when he was arrested. In this video, you will clearly see Mr. Davion Murphy taking full credit for his role in the shooting." When that footage was played in court in front of the jury, Davion Murphy sat there and laughed. That reaction went viral across every social media platform within hours. Alicia Andrews, Chance's girlfriend at the time of the trial, was the 5th person charged and tried separately from the 4 men. She had no gang ties of her own and was not a member of ATK. Her role was to ride in the tracking car with Chance and keep tabs on Foolio throughout the night. Digital investigators pulled deleted text messages from her iCloud account showing her sending location updates in real time, helping book the Airbnb the group used as a base, and coordinating with the others all the way through the early morning hours. The joint trial of the 4 men kicked off on April 22, 2026 in Hillsborough County Circuit Court in Tampa before Judge Michelle Sisko. Jury selection by itself took 2 full weeks, pulling from a pool of over 500 potential jurors, because any juror who sat on this case had to be willing to consider the death penalty if it came to that. The lead prosecutor was Scott Harmon, a death penalty specialist out of the Hillsborough State Attorney's Office. His opening statement ran close to 3 hours and walked the jury through the whole story from start to finish, including the gang war, the social media stalking, the vehicles tracked by highway cameras, the phone records, the club surveillance, and the actual shooting. He played drill rap videos in the courtroom. He showed photos of the bullet-riddled Charger. He looked at the jury and said, "For Charles Jones, there were no more birthdays. All that was left was a funeral." Each of the 4 men had their own defense lawyer, and each lawyer came out swinging with their own theory. The common argument across all 4 was that the case was mostly built on circumstantial evidence, like phone pings and camera footage, rather than someone physically identifying their client as one of the shooters. Chance's lawyer said there was no proof his client fired a gun. Rashad Murphy's lawyer told the jury to find actual evidence rather than assumptions. Chance's lawyer argued there was nothing showing his client knew a murder was being planned, and Davion Murphy's attorney told the jury there was, in his own words, 0 physical evidence that connects Davion Murphy to the death of Charles Jones. Over the 13 days of testimony that followed, the prosecution laid it out piece by piece. Detectives walked the jury through the cell tower data, the GPS records, the Instagram activity, the coordinated phone calls between the 2 cars at 2 in the morning while they shadowed Foolio between clubs. Hotel surveillance played back the Impala circling the building before the shooting. A Tesla parked nearby had its security camera running and captured the actual attack and the car fleeing under fire. The survivors described the chaos from inside the vehicles. A hotel guest talked about pulling her family to the floor as bullets came through the window. The medical examiner walked through every wound, and at the very end, during the closing arguments on May 7th, Davion Murphy apparently ran out of patience for the whole proceeding, turned to a co-defendant in open court and said out loud, "Stop talking to me, you don't love me." Judge Sisko had him removed from the courtroom in handcuffs. The jury began deliberating on May 8th. After roughly 7 to 9 hours of deliberation, which is genuinely fast for a capital murder case with 4 defendants, the jury came back on the evening of May 8th, 2026 with guilty verdicts on every single count for every single one of them. The actual moment the verdicts were read is something you need to see and hear for yourself, because no description of it does it justice.
State of Florida versus Isaiah Jermaine Chance, case number 24 CF 11996A Trial Division 1, verdict form. We, the jury, finds as follows as to count 1, victim Charles Jones. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder as charged.
That was just Isaiah Chance. Then the clerk moved on to Sean Gathright, where the jury confirmed he personally carried and discharged a firearm during the murder. Then came Rashad Murphy, then Davion Murphy. The same guilty findings on every count, moving down the list, one name at a time.
In the state of Florida versus Davion Rashad Murphy, case number 24CF11996E, Trial Division 1, verdict form. We, the jury, finds as follows as to count 1, victim Charles Jones. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder as charged. If during the commission of the offense, the defendant personally carried, display, used, threaten to use, or attempt to use a firearm? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant was a member or an associate of a criminal gang during the commission of the offense? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant committed the crime for the purpose of benefiting, promoting, or furthering the interests of a criminal gang? Yes.
All 4 men were convicted of first-degree premeditated murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Gathright and the 2 Murphys convicted additionally on attempted murder charges for the 3 people who survived the parking lot attack. The jury also made special findings confirming that Chance and the Murphys were gang members who carried out these crimes specifically to benefit their gang. Not one single count came back not guilty. The speed was what stood out to people who follow these kinds of cases. Less than 9 hours to deliberate 4 defendants on capital charges, with each defense team having argued its own separate theory of reasonable doubt. The jury heard all of it and still came back that fast. That is the evidence talking. When the verdict forms were being read out loud, all 4 men sat there looking stunned. But Sean Gathright, the youngest of the group, was the one who completely broke down on camera, crying openly as each count was called. That footage spread everywhere on social media, and the response from Foolio's mother, Sandrika Mays, was something a lot of people have not forgotten. She posted from inside the courtroom showing Gathright in tears with the caption, "Justice for Foolio, the right get back. Guilty as charged, we all gonna cry together. What they say? Pop a bottle of Don Julio, let's drink up." She was throwing the taunt back in their faces. The message that came from Rashad Murphy's phone hours after her son was killed had said to pop a bottle of Don Julio, using her son's name as a joke. Now she was saying it back to them from the same courtroom where they just got convicted. The state attorney's office put out a statement from Susie Lopez's office that said, "This guilty verdict delivers accountability and justice for Charles Jones's family, but it also sends a clear message that this community will not tolerate ruthless and calculated violence." Jacksonville law enforcement had been loud about where they stood from the very beginning of this case. The verdict was not the end of this story. In Florida, when the state is seeking the death penalty, the same jury that decided guilt stays together for a penalty phase, where both sides argue before the jury recommends whether the defendants should be executed or spend the rest of their lives in prison with no chance of release. That phase started on May 11th and 12th of 2026, which is exactly where things stand right now, and the 2 sides have been drawing very different pictures of who these men are. Foolio's mother gave a victim impact statement that was read in court by a victim's advocate. She talked about her pain, about her son's birthday falling right next to the date of his death, and about the last time she physically saw Charles being just 2 days before he was killed, on June 21st, 2024. That was his last birthday, and she was there for it. The prosecution laid out the aggravating factors, meaning the things that make these crimes worse in the eyes of the law. That the attack was planned well in advance, that multiple victims were put in danger, that it was all done to push forward the interests of a gang, and that the men who did it showed complete disregard for every other human being in that parking lot that night. The defense came in with the mitigation, which is where they try to humanize the people sitting at the defense table. For Sean Gathright, that started with his grandmother, Lorna Allen, who traveled to Tampa to testify about the young man she helped raise during family visits over the years.
He was a happy baby. friendly laugh, explore his environment. He was a good baby.
She shared memories of holiday gatherings, stories about Sean sneaking an alligator tail into the Thanksgiving meal without telling anyone what it was until everyone had already eaten it and said it was delicious. She called him self-disciplined, respectful, and dependable. She said she would continue calling him in prison for as long as she lives.
Do you still maintain a relationship with your grandson?
Yes, I do.
Okay, how do you do that now?
Once in a while, he would make a call to me, and I accept the call.
Okay. And will you continue to do that throughout his life?
I will forever, as long as I'm alive.
Then Gathraid himself got on the stand and spoke directly to the jury. He talked about being locked up since he was 18, about turning to God, about leading prayer circles in jail, about trying to mentor younger inmates so they would not end up in the same place he was in.
I just want to address the court today, and, I'm not here to dispute anything. I'm just here to be a man and take responsibility and express my feelings about this whole situation. That's what I plan on doing. To the victim's family, I want to send my deepest condolences and I understand that it's hard losing a child, a best friend, a brother, a cousin, and for that I just cannot say sorry enough. I feel terrible about the situation, but I'm a firm believer that God can use anything for good that the devil wants it for bad.
But when the prosecution got their turn, they went straight for the gap between what he was saying on the stand and what he actually did after the murder. They asked whether he felt remorse when he drove the Impala to his grandmother's house in Polk County the next day and left it there. They asked about the night he went to Club Parlay in Orlando, where he was on camera drinking Don Julio tequila and throwing gang signs. Gathraid's answer to all of it was the same.
What about later that night when you went to Orlando? Were you feeling remorse when you were out partying at Club Parlay, celebrating what you had done that day?
That was my sister's birthday party.
But did you feel any remorse while you were drinking Don Julio tequila and putting that in your video and throwing gang signs?
I'm here
Did you
to
feel remorse
testify
there?
about today, sir.
The prosecution pointed out to the jury directly that he was only there taking accountability because 12 people had already found him guilty. Whether the jury believes the remorse is real or whether they see it as someone doing what they need to do to stay alive is now entirely in their hands. While those 4 men are waiting on a decision between death and life without parole, Alicia Andrews is stuck in her own legal situation that has not been resolved either. She was convicted of manslaughter in October of 2025, but she hasn't been sentenced yet because the process fell apart over what happened with the judge. In January of 2026, an appeals court removed Michelle Cisco from Andrews' case after her defense team successfully argued that Cisco had been openly biased during the trial, repeatedly cutting off defense lawyers, appearing to help the prosecution along during hearings, and making comments that showed that she was not being neutral the way a judge is supposed to be.
The way that Mr. Harmon has been speaking to this side of the table is unprofessional, it's disrespectful, he's done it in front of the jury as well, and there has not been any attempt by the court to intervene.
The defense attorney, who had nothing to do with the case, explained how unusual this whole situation was, because judges almost never get removed after a trial is already finished.
There's a reason that the defendant doesn't feel he's going to get a fair trial. This is a pre-trial. Then yeah, you can move to recuse or disqualify a judge, but it's typically done beforehand. So this is more than rare in the sense that it was happening after the trial was over.
A new judge was assigned to the case, but as of May 12th, Alicia Andrews' legal team is still in court arguing that the manslaughter conviction should be thrown out entirely and that she should get a brand new trial because they say the removed judge's conduct was bad enough to have changed the outcome. Her sentencing has been pushed back again with a possible new date around May 22nd. she still faces up to 15 years, and the same judge who was removed from her case presided over the full trial of the 4 men without any issues being raised against her there. Here's what stays with you about this whole case. Foolio wasn't caught slipping by accident. He posted his birthday plans on Instagram, told the world what city he was going to be in, which clubs he was hitting, and the people who wanted him dead used every single one of those posts as a map. The same app he used to connect with his fans was the thing that got him followed 4 hours down the highway to a hotel parking lot where he had no reason to expect danger. Vlad had tried to warn him. He tried to warn Ace too. Neither of those conversations saved anybody. To be straight about one thing, Youngin Ace was not charged in this case, and nothing in the trial evidence named him as the person behind the hit. The 4 men a jury convicted, Isaiah Chance, Sean Gothright, Rashad Murphy, and Davion Murphy, are the ones held responsible. But the war they were fighting for did not stop when Foolio was buried, and it did not stop when these 4 got convicted. In January of 2025, a 7-year-old named Breon Allen was shot and killed in Jacksonville, and an incident investigators tied directly back to the same ongoing feud between 6 Block and ATK. A 7-year-old.
Yeah, you can't bring your brother back.
For sure.
Your brother's not here to celebrate with you.
Matter of fact, when I was in jail, a CEO used to tell me, he always say, the streets are undefeated.
Undefeated. They'll be here after we're all gone.
He should always tell me that.
Right. I mean, this street shit's was here hundreds of years or thousands of years before us. It's going to be thousands of years after we're gone.
My question for you in the comments is this. Does it count as real remorse when you only start talking about taking responsibility after 12 people have already decided you're guilty? Drop your thoughts below. And if you're new here, we cover cases like this every week, so click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. I'll see you in the next one.